This is HRS TV, and I'm Ambrose Panico reporting. I'm pleased to join you tonight with a couple of remarkable young gentlemen, both high school students who submitted and had research abstracts accepted to the HRS Congress, amongst many of us physicians that will be there. So I'd like to welcome both of them to HRS TV, and we're going to find a little bit out about each of them and their research. So tonight we have Abhi and Tanay here. So we'll start with Abhi. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Tell us where you're from and what you're doing.
All right, I am Abhiram Battini. I'm currently a high schooler in my junior year. I live in Memphis, Tennessee, and my research is currently focused around finding the ventricular origins of premature ventricular contractions using the 12-lead EKG.
And how about you, Tanay?
And then my name is Tanay Chitlur. I live in Portland, Oregon, and I go to Westview High School. I'm a sophomore in high school, and my abstract is about validating Einthoven and Goldberger's lead systems and their role in generating 12 lead ECG.
Okay, great. So Tanay, tell me a little bit about what kind of sparked your interest in this research project.
So I think it started in fifth grade when I built a model of the heart for the science fair. And since then, I've been thinking about the heart. In seventh grade, I built an ECG classifier just to classify ECGs. It's a pretty simple one. But then I realized that you can't detect all types of cardiovascular disease from that limited data I had. So I started wondering how to make 12 lead ECGs more accessible. And that's when I started working on this pipeline to synthesize a 12 lead ECG using wearable devices.
Okay. How about you, Abhi?
So in my case, last summer I did a rotation at the University of Tennessee under an electrophysiologist, and he personally taught me the fundamentals of how to localize PVCs using the EKG. And I realized that I already had prior experience with artificial intelligence. I made a few models to play certain video games, and I realized that I could apply that knowledge towards EKGs. And specifically in my case, I thought that I could automate the process of finding the origins of where PVCs are coming from in the heart. And once I had that idea, I was really inspired by it, and I worked as hard as I could for it.
Very, very impressive, guys. Very impressive. Now, what do you plan to do, or do you have any plans with what you'd like to see happen with the research you're doing? We'll start with you, Abhi.
Okay. So in my case, I just want to develop the system I've made as much as possible. Right now, it's a model to differentiate PVC morphologies from non-PVC morphologies. And then those PVC morphologies are passed through an algorithm based on leads 2, V1, and V5 of the 12-lead EKG to not only determine whether the PVC is coming from the right or left ventricle, but also whether it's coming from the base or the apex of that ventricle. I wanted to develop my system to not only make it more accurate, but to also make it more precise and add more potential locations that it could be coming from.
Right. And what about you, Tanay?
So my project, or like my abstract, is kind of split into three parts. So there's the recording part of it, there's the computing part of it, and then there's the synthesis part of it. So this abstract currently focuses on the computing part of it, so using Einthoven and Goldberger's leads to compute AVR, AVL, and AVF in lead two. But then in the future, I would like to actually synthesize leads V1 to V5 using maybe like generative neural networks or other types of generative AI. So you can actually create a diagnostic quality 12 lead ECG using only leads recorded on a wearable device.
Very cool. So I'm going to take a stab here, and you two should collaborate because I think if you took the both of your projects and combined them, you could come up with quite an amazing final piece here. Um, Abhi, let me ask you a question. Where do you see this fitting in? Like, where do you think you could see this being used readily once you've got it to the point where you are satisfied?
So once I've made the system as powerful as possible for the 12-lead EKG, I think applying it to the as many parts of the medical field as possible is a good place to start. But if I can expand the technology even further into wearable devices, I think that would be a really good place to go towards, as that would help as many people as possible and also help promote the early detection of these PVCs, as well as telling the patient a probable location for where they're coming from.
Yeah, I think there's a certain value add to the referral patterns. And so if you could come up with a project, or if you come up with a product that would help localize, as you said, left, right, high, low, etc., you could easily kind of bin these patients into high risk and low risk, or idiopathic and pathologic PVCs, which would certainly help expedite getting them into the right hands, sooner. So I think there's really something interesting and very promising in what you're doing. And what about
Thank
you,
you.
Tanay?
And then, so for mine, so currently to get a 12-lead ECG, you would have to go to the doctor's office and you'd have to go to a hospital or doctor's office. And that doesn't allow for like at-home monitoring and early detection of these cardiovascular diseases. So, but on the other hand, wearable devices, which many people have, they can only record 3 leads, which means that you're stuck in the middle where you have to get early detection, you have to go to a hospital. And if you want kind of like half detection, you have to use a wearable device. So I see my project kind of fitting in where it's bridging that gap between those two and using a wearable device to create that 12-lead ECG, but it's all done at home. So maybe creating an app or something available to the public where people can use it and use their wearable device, actually get a 12-lead ECG.
Very, very, very interesting. And I think too, if the pandemic taught us anything, is that telemedicine is super valuable and it's here to stay. I know my practice and a number of other practices are working on platforms to try to do exactly that, and having a fully diagnostic EKG in that space would be huge, would be absolutely huge. So I can't say anything other than I'm floridly impressed with what both of you guys are doing, especially as high school students. So keep up the great work. Last thing I wanted to ask you guys is, what are your future plans? Why don't we start with you, Tanay?
So like personal plans or like for the project?
What are you not for the project, just personal? Like, you want to go into
Okay.
medicine? Are you more interested in
Well, I
tech?
wanted to go into medicine for a little bit, but now I've moved a little bit to computer science. So I want to go into computer science, and my dream school will be MIT. So
Beautiful, beautiful. And what about you, Abhi?
Honestly, in my case, I'm still not completely decided because I've been pondering whether to go into medicine or data science for a few years now, and I can't truly put a finger on which one I want to do. If I had to choose, honestly, I would take a job where I could do both of them, as honestly, both are my passions.
That's fantastic. Um, Guys, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us. Very impressed, as I said. Regardless of whether you go into medicine, electrophysiology, whatever you do, I think you both have extremely bright futures ahead of you. So keep your passion, keep your inquisitive natures, and keep pushing research forward. So with that, I'd like to say again, thank you guys for joining us on HRS TV. This will be the end of this segment. Ambrose Panico signing off for HRS TV.
thank you so much. Thank you for having us.
For having us.